All right, well, good morning, everyone. We are going to get started, and welcome to all of you back again after hopefully had a nice summer and had some wonderful time with family and friends just to relax as best as we can through all of this craziness. But welcome back to all of you for our McKay membership check-in, the first one of our new program year. And so we're happy to have Tammy Brown, the president of our board of directors, who will be joining us this morning. She is actually in the middle of transitioning and moving her building this morning, kind of a last minute thing. So she may be joining us a little bit later, but we'll be sure to welcome her when she comes. I wanted to start, the world has transitioned and changed a little bit, as we're all aware, and I'm sure we're all aware of. Things look a little bit different than when we last saw you in May. But I think what has been most inspiring is that we have continued to persevere and push through. And we've seen some wonderful programming happening over the summer, whether it's been in announcing when we're going to be reopening and having completers and high school graduates, whether it's been training new volunteers to come on board or doing new orientations and registration in person or online. We've celebrated graduations, anniversaries of programs and milestones, and we've held professional development as well. And I just think that's really powerful and a testament to all of you as professionals and what you've been able to accomplish in your programs and what we can continue to do this year, as we know that there may be some additional challenges, but some additional opportunities as well. So just wanted to start there as a positive note that we have done so much, and we're stronger when we're all working together and we're all supporting each other and providing resources to everyone as well. And so thank you for your continued work. It's been so inspiring just to see on Facebook or the texts and emails that I've received and that we've received in our office. Has been very powerful to see what you all have been up to this summer. We got a couple other people that are coming in, so I'm just gonna make sure that they are in. And we'll keep moving. So the format for today, just as a general courtesy to everyone, if you could just make sure that you're muted, and I'll go through as well and kind of make sure that as well. But that's really just helpful for us to cut down any background noise. But we do want this to be an interactive session. So please submit questions that you may have into the chat box. Judy, our awesome resident secretary at McKay, longtime secretary, will be working kind of to sift through those, and we'll try to answer those as best we can throughout the morning. I hope to give you some updates from McKay. We've been very active and working very hard on your behalf this summer, both our office staff as well as our board of directors. And then we'll have some return to work and learn updates, and then some additional program management updates for alternative and adult education. We'll talk a little bit about funding and advocacy and have some time for Q&A. So welcome everyone again. If you haven't had a chance, you can just go through and put your name and your program in the chat box. It's always wonderful to see all of you on the call. I'd like to start by kind of welcoming and introducing our new McKay Board of Directors. We have had some transitions in our leadership, and we're excited about the future and new opportunities. As I said earlier, Tammy Brown from Troy is our new president for this year. Karen Govin is our vice president from Southwest Solutions. Oogie is our advocacy chair. And Kelly Vela is our treasurer from Huron Valley, as well as the number of other board members that you see listed here. I won't go through everybody's name, but please know that we appreciate and value their service. They are working hard in the field, just like you all are, in different roles, in adult, alternative, community education, workforce development. And so we're excited to have their leadership. And if at any time you have questions or concerns, please do reach out to them. That is their kind of call. That's why they want to be actively engaged as members of the board of directors. So if they're in your area and you know them, please reach out to them. You can always reach out to our office as well. But in particular, I'd like to welcome Charlie Wynn from Plainwell. He's our new at-large representative, as well as Heather Robidoux, our networking chair, and Maha Maki from McKay Region 6, which is a large portion of the eastern side of the state. And I'd like to welcome them. Those are our new members this year. They've got a lot of energy that they brought with them. And we're very excited to share what the board has been working on your behalf this summer. A couple of updates from the association. So this summer, our board of directors, as I mentioned, we really hit the ground running, and we facilitated a strategic planning session. And we really felt that we wanted to move forward with that, even in light of what's going on, to really conduct and make sure that we are being responsive to what's happening in the field, responsive to your needs as members, and responsive to the landscape, both at the national level, but also more particularly the local and the state levels. And so as a part of that, I've been sending out, and I thank you all those that have completed the membership survey. And we also surveyed our strategic state and national partners. And that's been really helpful to see and to really assess McKay's role within the state and at the national level, and how we can continue to not only support our members, but support other partner agencies across our state and our nation as well. And we really have been working to strategize and really think about in ways that we can support equity and inclusion in a more holistic and wholesome way in our actions every day, in our programming, in our professional development. And we are committed to that as an association. And so we'll be unveiling a few professional development opportunities, both at our fall conference and later this fall, focus on equity and inclusion, because we feel that that is an important conversation, not only for us to have in support of our participants that engage with us, but the families that we serve, as well as you as members. We want to be able to promote you all and make sure that we are creating an environment that's welcoming and inclusive to everyone at McKay. Some additional updates. We have made some revisions to our professional development calendar. And so that will be released soon. I'm hoping later this week or early next week, so that you all have that and you can look for that and make sure that you're planning ahead as you look throughout the year. I wanted to share that we have announced that our fall conference will be going virtual this year. Please mark the date for November 5th and 6th. It's a Thursday and Friday. It will be on a virtual platform application called Cova. We're very excited with Kelly Vela as kind of coordinating all of that. And we really have been very strategic as well with our conference planning committee to make sure that we are going to be delivering a high quality content-filled professional development for you. So we hope that you'll join us. We hope that you'll register. Registration is live. If you're able to, we'd encourage you to go to our website and do that.
And we would also encourage you to submit if you were thinking about doing a presentation. The call for presenters has gone out. So if you're thinking about doing a presentation, get that in also for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you to Kelly and her team for all the work that they've put in to the fall conference already and will continue to do. We continued also to work on your behalf. We have some ongoing work groups. We started calling them summer work groups, and now as we're kind of transitioning into the fall, I think we're just going to have them be called the work groups because we really are committed to helping you all get off on the right foot here this fall. And so we have 4 working groups. One is the framework for reopening, which is where some of the ideas for today's presentation came from, as well as a remote testing for TABE work group, remote testing for CASA's work group, and a distance learning work group. And those will continue to meet. They meet every couple of weeks. We share best practices, strategies, new tools. Sometimes we constructively vent what's going on in our programs and try to solve problems. But we really would encourage you to join those work groups if you're interested in any of those areas. And you can obviously reach out to GD or I for more information. Our standing committees around advocacy, alternative ed, adult education, community ed, high school equivalency, adult basic education, and workforce development will be coming back this year as well. I'm very, very excited. We've got some wonderful things planned for the committees this year, looking at data and really looking how they can better support our McKay strategic plan. But the first meeting of that will be on September 11th at 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. That will be a virtual meeting, as I anticipate that for the foreseeable future, most of our professional development will be virtual as well. But that's a wonderful opportunity for you as McKay members to be involved in our working committees. And if you're involved and you are committed, sketches are available for you to participate as a McKay member as well. And so that's a wonderful thing for you to take advantage of as a McKay member. And we're very excited, and more information will be coming ahead for those. Any questions right now about some of the work that we've been doing this summer? All right, I'd like to transition a little bit. So the focus and topic of today was returning to work and learn, and we wanted to provide you with a series of resources as well as some discussion and some updates, obviously, on program administration and management as you begin to reopen. These were three resources that I felt would be valuable for you to know about. We've discussed them before, but I think that they're going to be important for you as you continue your work throughout the fall. The first is the Michigan Safe Start Plan, which was developed by the Office of the Governor. And this tool will really be helpful for keeping track of what can occur at each stage of re-engagement for our economy. It includes the information on what the regions are, because as you know, Michigan is now divided into safe zones, if you will, for coronavirus, and different regions, depending on different amounts of cases, will change according to their regional track of that. And as we begin to return back to school and work this fall, that might be something that you want to take a look at. In addition, the Michigan Safe Schools Plan is the roadmap specifically for schools. And so that tool will be helpful for keeping track of what can happen for in-person instruction at each stage, and requirements for masks and social distancing. And while your individual districts or your individual organizations may have their own plans, this will supersede any plan, depending on what phase that we're in, if we're in phase 3 or phase 4 or phase 5. Phase 6 is what we hope to be able to get to when things are in the all clear. But this will be important for you just to keep at the back of your mind as you think about planning for the fall. And so that you know in real time what's going on and what is happening. And then the last is our McKay Return to Learn and Work framework. This is really just a series of questions, kind of a checklist for you as you go through and return to learn and work, that you can go through and just kind of run through with your staff or individually if you're a program administrator, or even as a teacher. There's a section for you there as well that you can just kind of remind yourself of things that you should be keeping track of and be aware of. Did I communicate? Have I communicated with my students this week? Have I made contact with them? Do they know what the expectations are? We really think that these tools will be helpful for you, and we want to ensure that you have access to those. So these are also linked on our website, on our coronavirus page. For the foreseeable future, we're going to keep that active. When you go to our website, right on the homepage, there's a link for that as well. We're also happy this morning as we return to work and learn to be joined by Augustine Sorovi, an occupational safety consultant at the Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and also a consultant in education and training. And really, I talked with Augustine about sharing some of the resources that the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity has available as you return to work and learn, that are easily accessible, that are free resources that could be a referral for you. So Augustine, are you on the line this morning?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great. We can hear you. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I will allow you to share. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. You should have the ability to share.
Okay. All right. So right now you should hopefully be seeing the PDF document that says Michigan COVID-19 resources.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So in the chat, I did put my name, phone number, and email. So, and I am from the Michigan Occupational Safety Administration. So my Osha, the CET division. So we primarily do consultation, education, and training. A lot of that, of course, now has to do with issues related to COVID-19, but we also do training on all kinds of other topics from guarding to hazard communication to a lot of other items that are somewhat related to COVID-19, but also things that aren't. So feel free to use our resources, certainly for COVID-19 topics, but also for other topics you might have, like PPE, wearing of safety glasses, or anything like that. So today's presentation that I want to do is I wanted to cover really what resources we have available and what resources I use on a regular basis, or what I reference. A lot of stuff is available on our website. It's certainly a lot of information is available on Osha's website. There's also some other unique information available from other websites as well. So I'm going to run through those and just give a brief description of what I look for, what I reference most often, the questions I've been asked, and then hopefully it will be some great tools for you to use. And then up here on the screen, you'll see that there is a MyOsha hotline number. And that number you can call at any point to talk to somebody from MyOsha and ask them questions related to COVID-19, or certainly other topics as well we can help you with as well. But that number is primarily used for COVID-19 discussion. We do have an Ask MyOsha website where you can send us an email. And then you can also request us for a formal consultation assistance. And that might be something through the form of email, talking over the phone. We can do video conferences, so virtual, and then we can also come on site as well. So those are all options that you have at your disposal, and it's all from the CET, it's all free of charge. And any interaction you have with us is all would never lead to any kind of enforcement visit. So I want to make sure that you feel comfortable talking to us and asking us questions, and that nothing you say to us would ultimately lead to an inspection because of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of our websites real quick. So hopefully up now you can see the Michigan.gov's primary coronavirus website. And of course, this is the website we want everybody to start with. It's something that us from MyOsha, we look at every day. We pull up and look at the same resources. But in here, some of the information that was already mentioned earlier is you have your Michigan Safe School Roadmap. Certainly a lot of the links to get you started on some really nice documents. The ones that we reference most of the time are the executive orders. And through this, then the primary executive order that MyOsha focuses on is ultimately going to be Executive Order 2020-161. So although we do cover a few other executive orders that reference food establishments, we certainly would reference the K through 12 executive order. There's other ones in here as well, but the Executive Order 2020-161 is our primary resource. And that's really focused on safeguarding Michigan workers. So, and of course, MyOsha's primary focus is workplace safety. So one thing that I do want to bring up, which is been commonly asked, and I think this would be helpful information for today, is that within Executive Order 2020-161, there is a requirement for record keeping. And one of the questions we get often is, how long do we need to keep those records? Well, at this point, then the requirement to keep any of those records is through the length of the executive order plus 1 calendar year. So as long as that executive order is in place, then you keep it through that plus 1 additional calendar year. And I'll reference what is required as far as record keeping within that order so that we can make sure we're clear on that. But that's just something I wanted to point out right off the bat. So accessing this website for all the executive orders is pretty critical. From there, we do have our primary, as far as MyOsha goes, our workplace safety guidance. And this website is really great because it takes the information from the executive orders and it tries to put it into a presentation format, which is can be shared. It's certainly through a video format. You can either read the executive order directly, or you can watch the PowerPoint presentation, you can access fact sheets. So there's lots of information directly related to the different sections within executive order. And of course, we have pre-K through 12. We do have offices, and certainly a general industry one, which is going to cover the general sections. Within here, one of the most basic components of the executive order is this COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. And we do have a sample that I'll pull up here in a second. This is really a fundamental component of your, should be of your COVID-19 response, regardless. This applies to any employer, regardless of whether it's a school, a hospital, a manufacturing facility, or whatnot. Every employer needs to have a preparedness and response plan. So we do have a sample one for low and medium risk employers. And the question is asked, well, how do I know if I'm low or medium risk? And Osha has an excellent document on that, but to say it in the simplest format is that anyone who has exposure to somebody who is suspected or confirmed COVID-19, they would likely be a high or above risk level. So factory setting, most likely for most part of the school setting, offices, they're all going to be low to medium. There could be some exceptions, and those would certainly be possibly school nurses. That could be staff that has to clean a room or clean a section of a facility after somebody has been in there that has had COVID-19, it's COVID-19 positive. So there are times where there could be certain categories within a place of employment or certain employees that may be high risk. But for the most part, in a lot of facilities that are not in the hospital setting, not in the nursing home or care facility setting, they would likely be a lower medium risk. But in here, we have a lot of information and certainly a lot of resources. So I'll quickly try to run you through some of those as well, and then I'll pull up some documents to point out some specific points. We also have the Osha website. And one thing to note on the Osha website, if you pull this up on a daily basis or a weekly basis, there's a section here that says news and updates. This is a great section because it'll always make sure you're always keeping up to date with whatever has been recently released. They have a lot of information in here specific to certain industries. Some of these may or may not apply to you, but if you click on more, then there's some specific to all kinds of different industries, or even if a new instruction comes out, a directive from OSHA. So from here, from federal OSHA is where we have our return to workplace guidance, and that's referenced in the executive order. So I'll be showing you that, but there's a lot of good information here that can help you work through different questions or specific industries. Of course, the CDC website, which most people have probably already accessed. The one item that I find most helpful is if you go to the guidance documents. And part of the reason that's extremely helpful is because it's loaded, it can be loaded in order of newest to oldest. So as new guidance documents come in, you can see what's been updated. If something new new document's been presented, or if they've updated that document. So you can always make sure that you stay up on the latest information specific to your industry. I also provided in the links is a directory for all the health departments. And I bring that up because from my OSHA's perspective, we cover primarily the executive orders, of course. We cover a lot of federal OSHA items, but we're not necessarily the experts in local health department executive orders or rulings or their directions. So we do want you to always reference your local health department and make sure you're keeping current with whatever information they're providing or what their requirements are. And just out of example, if we click on Ingham County, we can go through and it will take you to where is the Ingham County website. So you want to go to your specific county's website and find information. In this case, for Ingham County, they do have emergency orders, and they have one from August 18th. So just yesterday, they have an emergency order. And in this case, or in any case, a local health department can set specific requirements, and that could be, instead of allowing 100 people for an outdoor gathering, they could restrict it to 25 people. So that's always something to keep in mind, that you may have more specific requirements from a local health department. The next website up here is our Michigan symptoms website. This is primarily an app that allows workers to input their health information, or their screening information, that is. This is an app that Osha uses for us as employees, and it works well. I've used it. I do use it. It's easy to use. It stores the data for you, and is a great resource. There's other options you can do. You can do paper copies. You can create your own system. This is just one option that's been created, that is being created for you, that's available free of charge for employers to use for wellness checks, to take the wellness checks and then record them. I mentioned we have the Ask My Osha section of our website, and then really what that primarily means is that you can send an email to My Osha and ask them a question. You could also send an email directly to a consultant, but this would be another avenue that could be used by both employers and employees to ask questions directly. I mentioned the request for consultative assistance, or RCA as it's called, and that's when you're requesting formal assistance. Now, part of that is, as you can imagine, we're fairly busy right now. So depending on your geographical area, then you may be able to get assistance fairly quickly, or sometimes you may have to wait depending on what you're requesting for a couple months. So if you're looking for a virtual meeting, a phone conversation, something like that, then that can usually be handled fairly quickly. If you want an on-site visit, then that may take up to 3 months to schedule, depending on how far out in advance individual consultants booked. So I do want to mention from the CDC website that there is the information that is asked quite a bit about the isolations for person with COVID-19, and this of course is not in the healthcare setting. This covers information certainly about how long somebody has to stay in isolation, and then there is a small passage in here that discusses how long somebody would need to stay in quarantine as well. So they have the recommendation on quarantine. And other discussion about testing and changes in testing. One nice thing about the website is that they do provide the updates and what they changed. So that's extremely useful. So if you check this page every so often, you can see what's been updated or how it's changed from a previous edition. Close contact is a question that we're often asked. What does it mean to be a close contact? And the CDC has the definition for us. And in general, that means within 6 feet of someone for approximately 15 minutes. It does talk about 2 days before the onset of illness or the testing. So there is a time period before somebody might even know that they have COVID-19. There's other stipulations that come in here and other things to consider if somebody is in the healthcare setting, but for the most part, close contact is considered within 6 feet for 15 minutes. Now, there's other things to consider, of course. If you're sitting in a classroom with somebody, you may not be within 6 feet of them, but you're within that classroom for the entire day. Then those are also things that you would need to consider as well when you're discussing close contact. From the EPA, the website regarding List N for disinfectants for use for COVID-19, this is important on 2 points. Is the first, of course, is you want to make sure that you're using a product that is listed, that is under this list, so approved by EPA. And secondly, anytime you introduce a new chemical to the workplace, you're going to want to make sure that your hazard communication program has been updated. So if this is the first time you've heard of the term hazard communication program, then we definitely would want to have a discussion and talk about setting up a program and making sure that employees have been trained. But likely probably most participants here today know or certainly have a hazard communication program. But I just want to remind you that as you're purchasing new disinfectants, that those are considered products that would be fall under the hazard communication standard, and therefore you would need to get safety data sheets. You would need to make sure employees are trained on the use of them. They have the appropriate PPE when they're using those products. All those things are important to consider when using any of these items. I also like to bring up a website that has information, and this is appropriate to many of you probably if you have libraries or book exchanges. This website is an excellent resource because they've done specific testing on library type resources. So books, DVDs, even storage containers for them. So this has a lot of information on how long can the virus survive on the surface? How long should you be holding those books? So if you have students that are, or teachers or whoever is exchanging books between individuals, how long should you hold onto those books before you redistribute them? Those are all questions that were often asked. And this website has some great up-to-date data on how long that stays on the books. So, or other items as well, DVD cases, CDs. I want to bring up just fairly quickly, because I'm running close on time here, this is the guidance document from federal Osha. And what this document really does is it walks you through establishing your exposure levels. And that's what I discussed in the beginning of this presentation, that likely most employers have low and medium exposure levels, but there are times when you might fall under something higher. So within this document, it really walks you through that, of classifying your worker exposure level and what we expect as far as PPE or protection for the workers. And then finally, the document here is our sample COVID-19 preparedness and response plan. And this is a template that you can use, you can fill out and get yourself started fairly quickly. And certainly we'd ask that we want you to customize it, make it specific to your workplace, but it does provide you most of the information here that you would need. At the end, I did reference, and I'll make this a little bigger, the record keeping requirements. So part of the Executive Order 161 is that you maintain training records, you maintain records of the daily entry self-screening, and then you also maintain records when an employee is identified with a confirmed case of COVID-19. So those are the three sections that are specifically called out for maintaining those records, and we said that you have to maintain them for the life of the executive order plus another calendar year. And that is all the resources I have.
Great, August. This is really very helpful. You know, I've gotten a lot of chats back and forth that this is very helpful and great resources. So a couple of questions here. So if someone works, let's just say as a part of a larger organization and they have not specifically been tasked with keeping the records, you know, for their particular organization, is there someone that you would recommend that they go to, you know, within the larger organization that does? I assume that every organization and every entity by the executive order is required to have a plan in place, correct?
Every employer is required to have a COVID preparedness and response plan. And specifically within the executive order, it does talk about designating a supervisor, or it could be a couple supervisors that are in charge, really, that have the authority over the plan. So I would say that if someone doesn't know who that person is, that's probably a training issue, or maybe there's no plan in place yet. But the first step is certainly to get a plan in place, and then to establish part of that is to establish who's in charge or who's going to manage the plan. And all employees need to know who that is. So they should have a good idea of who to contact and ask questions. And certainly those questions should be answered during the training session, which is required to be documented.
And then can you just repeat thank you for answering that. Can you repeat the timeline of how long the records need to be kept?
So the records would need to be kept through the life of the executive order, so while it's active, plus an additional calendar year. So whenever the executive order is rescinded or replaced by something new, you just add another calendar year on top of that, and that's how long we would expect you to keep the records.
Great. Another question about if you can go back and share the app that you were talking about, the My Symptoms app.
Okay, yep.
I think they were wanting to look at the website.
And I do, I'll share the PDF document I showed with the links at the very beginning. I'll make sure I provide that to you. You can share with members, but misymptomapp.state.mi.us is going to be the app. And what would need to happen first is an employer would set it up first. Then they would give the code, the access code to the employees, because when you go to register your own personal account, you'll want to have the code from your employer to set that up. So, start with have the employer start and then distribute that information to all the employees.
Great. And that is free, you said, correct?
Free, yes. Yep.
Great. Are there any other questions for Augustine? I know that this is please put them into the chat. I know that this is a great conversation that we're having. I know that some of us are not necessarily responsible for all the elements of reopening in our respective areas, but I think it's really important that we have this information because sometimes we know, as we did in the spring in crises, sometimes that point of contact gets logged down with bigger issues, right, and other conversations. So it's great to have this information at our fingertips so we can make more informed decisions on our behalf. Any other additional questions? Well, I will say, Augustine, when there's no more questions, that means you've done a very thorough job. So great. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. And certainly feel free to use that number I referenced, or in the very beginning of the chat, I put my information. Even if it's a matter of saying, you brought up this website, or I can't find this piece of information, where should I look? I'm happy to help with that because oftentimes it's not that I necessarily have all the answers, but I do usually have a pretty good grasp on what resources are available to share with you. And hopefully between the two of us, we can work together and get a solution because I certainly am not an expert in everything. But I do have a lot of resources at my disposal that I can share. So that was my goal today, is to share resources. And certainly you can contact my Osha. Please contact my Osha if you have questions, because we do truly want to educate before we regulate. So that's important to us. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll stop sharing.
And we'll be sure to share the contact information and all the resources as well. Thank you again so much, Augustine. All right. I wanted to kind of shift a little bit here as we begin to think about returning to learn. I know that this is a lot of information this morning, but I wanted to reiterate that we have recorded this. You'll get the recording as well as all of the documents that we're mentioning and the copy of the PowerPoint with all the links as well. So you'll have access to that. Hopefully by the end of today, you'll have access to all that information. And I was reminded that we really, at this point, I hadn't introduced myself. So just for all of you, again, I'm Patrick Brown, Director of McKay. We're joined by Judy Walker, our wonderful McKay Secretary. And I think now Tammy Brown, our President and of the Board of Directors, is on the line as well. So we'll continue on with our presentation. Again, if you have questions throughout, please put them into the chat box. So I wanted to share over the weekend, in the last week, we've seen a lot of changes in K-12 administration of programs around instructional hours, funding, and assessments. And that was through the Return to Learn package, it's called. That was passed by the Michigan House and Senate and was signed by the governor this week. It moved pretty quickly through the legislative process, and it impacts directly K-12 education, which for our membership really leans into how schools are going to be able to operate and return to school, as well as our alternative education programs, our community education programs. And we're still waiting to see what the entire implications could be for adult education. So here are basically the nuts and bolts of it. And I've included a link for you to study it further if you like. The Michigan Senate Fiscal Agency is very thorough, and they really have outlined all of the bullets that are included in the package of legislation that was passed It was passed over 3 bills, and really around instructional hours, it waived the days and hours mandates. So that 1,080 hours has been waived, but it does require that the content that would have been delivered in that time period of a regular school year or program year would still continue to be that same level of content would have to be delivered equivalent to last year. It does require at least 1 two-way communication each month for 75% of pupils in a school district. And it requires districts to review the instructional learning plans each month at their regularly scheduled board meeting. Around funding, it establishes K-12 funding as a 75% based on their FTE amount that they receive through the count day in February 2020. And 25% of the funding is based on count levels for 2020-2021 year. So if a couple of things within your district, this is good news overall. It provides some solid footing. Some of the challenges are that if the FTE amount is changed, or if there's a cut in reduction for state school aid, that could ultimately change the funding that your district receives based on that FTE amount that's there. Both the governor as well as both houses, the House and the Senate, have said that they want to keep education funding as consistent as possible. And through this act, and I think through the conversations that we've been having and that they've been having at the state level, that seems that that is their goal. And so really at this point, we don't know much more than that. We'll continue to watch that as in regards to funding levels. You know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of movement here behind establishing that K-12 funding is kept consistent. In terms of assessment, it does require that a formal benchmark assessment must be administered within the first 90, I should say days. I'll make sure that I add that in there. The first 90 days of instruction for the beginning of the school year. And then a second one must be delivered before the last day of school. And a formal benchmark assessment, those will be defined by the Michigan Department of Education. They're looking at 4 to 5 examples of that they'll be releasing to individual districts to determine which protocol might be best for them. So this goes into effect immediately for this school year. And so this is something that if you're in an alternative education program or you work closely with your school district, that you'll want to continue to monitor and to continue to look at. Something that Shelley Hansen, our alternative education chair, also looked at was if you're in an alternative setting, it would be helpful at this time to also reach out to your pupil accounting person, that your monitor that works with your district, to just verify that everything's on track. If there are changes that you need to have, that pupil accounting manager can also assist with ensuring that you're within the guidelines. So that was one recommendation that our alternative education committee had. Are there any questions around the return to learning package? All right, we'll move forward. So as we transition to adult education, I know that this is a large conversation, and I want us to have some time here to make sure that we're answering all of the questions. McKay really encompasses a wide variety of programs from adult, alternative, community education, and workforce development and training. And so we're trying to really hit on all of them today as we return to learn and work and really understand the implications and some of the changes that are happening. So really for adult education updates, there are some updates and changes around assessments and funding that we really felt are important to share. In terms of assessment, as previously announced over the summer, the state assessment policy has changed and has been updated. I think overall, I think the general feeling is that this will create a little bit of flexibility for you all as you return to programming. And one of the major tenets of that is that an assessment from the program year 2019-2020 can be used for re-enrollment in 2020-2021. This could be very helpful for you all as you're looking at pre-testing individuals as you start a new program year. You could use a test for anyone that was enrolled in 1920 and use that as the pretest for 2020, 2021. This is obviously up to you at the individual level to decide if that's what you're going to do or not. But I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that with your mayor's database management person and really consider that and talk about that as you talk about the re-enrollment process or enrollment of new participants. And that it could be a great tool for everyone. In addition, they've extended, or I should say expanded, the number of hours that you can have is 12 hours of instruction before a pretest must be administered. So that allows some flexibility. It's not as much flexibility as McKay advocated for, but it was an increase up to 12 hours. So you can deliver 12 hours of instruction before having to deliver that pretest. And then in addition, participants enrolled in high school completion can be exempt from assessment testing and can be placed in an EFL level 5 or 6, depending on the number of credits that they previously earned, high school credits that they previously earned. Another asset, another tool for you to utilize as you begin the re-enrollment process. And they formally approved remote testing as well. So those are available via CASAS and TAPE. Are there questions around the assessment policy?
Yes, I have one.
Great.
So, because I don't know, I've missed some of the meetings and stuff. So the high school completion students can be exempt for assessment testing, but are they counted in our post-test rate? Are they pulling that population out before they do the post-test rate calculation? Or are they included in that?
That is a great question. I would say that they should be, but oftentimes, as we know, sometimes they're not pulled out in that data set. So I will write that down as a great point, and I would also encourage anyone to ask that question this afternoon as well.
I asked Sue that, and she said that it was only the people that were pre-tested that count as the post-test in the post-test rate. But sometimes I agree, I don't know how they pull their numbers, if that will stand true, but that's what she said. You can only post-test who you pre-tested.
So it sounds like she's saying, yes, they are pulled out, but I think it would be great for us to reach out and to ensure that that's accurate.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes, go ahead, Tammy.
It's Tammy. With the CASAS testing, have they talked about doing larger groups than 5 yet? I think there was a pilot in Texas or Kentucky. Have we heard any updates on being able to expand the remote testing to larger groups with breakouts?
So they are continuing to work on that. I would say in the short term, no. I know that there's a few programs on that are doing the testing. One of the things that we had a CASAS join us for our remote testing CASAS update last week, I think it was, and what they shared were some innovative strategies that people are doing, including doing testing outside, testing with 2 or 3 monitors at their home, and then they can have 5 individuals on each monitor or on each laptop or computer to increase the number of people that they're testing. But as of right now, it still stands at 5, up to 5 people that you can administer a test to. But their goal is to expand that, but they did not indicate a timetable for when that would happen. There is a CASAS update, I believe, this week, so perhaps it will be announced there, and we can certainly watch for that and send updates around that as well.
I have a quick question, Patrick. Ann Van Duzen from Belding.
Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. Going back to the exempting students, could that potentially hurt your your performance rate if you don't test a student? Maybe he has really close to graduating and only needs a few credits, so you exempt him. But if you tested him, he could have made a gain. Am I thinking correctly that maybe we would want to test them anyway?
That was my concern as well. That is kind of a what do you want to say? A clause that should be used sparingly, I would say, because yes, then your total numbers would not be. You wouldn't be able to count them as having to have a test.
You might be shooting yourself in the foot.
Yes. But for those participants, we do always have those few every year that come through and are very close, you know, to completing and getting that diploma. It might be more advantageous, and really it would be a hindrance. You know, there's always those few that would be a hindrance to test, right? And you require them to stay for the 40 hours and they're so close and they really just need a little boost. I would see that this could be helpful for them in that regard. But I also had the same concern around using it in a broad stroke across the program.
Patrick, there's a couple questions in the chat.
Oh, great. Yes, Stacy, go ahead.
So with the assessment policy, if you have a student who's also in, say, ABE for math, but their high school completion for English, you would still have to pre-test them, however, correct? Because in order to be able to put them in the ABE math level, you're going to have an assessment. Is that correct?
That is a good question. Any thoughts that anyone has? I don't want to.
It sure seems like it to me, because Stacey, your thinking is correct. This is Karen from Livonia. Because the current qualification for ABE is that you have to have a pre and a post test, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I did ask Erica about that on one of our calls, and yes, if they're going to be an ABE, they have to have a pre-test. That's if they're high school completion only, would that apply, that they don't have to have it?
Okay.
So
Right.
if you do ABE, they do have to have their test.
Yes, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that,
Even
Mary.
if they're
Yeah.
enrolled in high school completion and ABE, which we do a lot of times, they would have to have the pre-test to do the ABE part.
Yes. So yes, that is important to say that this was applicable to HSC only. They'd have to be enrolled in the HSC only. They wouldn't also be able to.
Great. Thank you for
Great.
your help.
Patrick, this is Tammy. Let's make sure we talk to Erica about that at our checkup meeting, just so that they know that there's questions around it, so they can be very clear when they send out new information to just address that and be very specific.
Great.
I think in that example too, you could just pre-test math only if they were doing ABE classes in math before.
Mm-hmm.
That would at least shorten the testing.
True, that's right. You'd only need to pre-test in the subject area they were going to be in ABE.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to do that to see. I mean, you might not know reading, you know, if you didn't pre-test.
Right, with any new student, you don't know if they're high school level or not until you test them.
Right.
Right. I mean, so.
What I see that high school completion thing working for is somebody who shows up, who needs 1 or 2 credits, who you can get them through, you know, and you don't really need to test. And you're probably not going to throw them in ABE. You're just going to get them the credits they need and get them out. So that would be useful for that.
Yeah, that's how I see the clause being used as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's most realistic. Yeah. A couple of other questions. So regarding GED testing, so we do have on our website, we held a GED centers check-in that holds a little bit more information. I would refer you guys to look at that. GED testing right now is extended remotely through August 31st, and they've expanded the eligibility requirements right now, and I think they're really trying to see if that will take off. Only over the summer, there was a low number that were able to take advantage of that in the whole state. I think it was around 50 or less that remotely took the assessment test and passed. And so I think they're really looking at opportunities to expand that programming. Testing centers, as the executive orders stand now, can be open, are beginning to open. We've been trying to give you a weekly update on what testing centers are open. We've been asked to let everyone know that if you are a testing center, please to update your information on your online account, and also to shoot both Mckay and Trisha Kane at the Adult Education Office an email. That's really helpful because sometimes there's a lag between what's open and what's not. And according to the state office, they're getting multiple calls a day on what testing centers are open. And some testing centers say that they're open, but their hours are different than what are posted on the website. If you're helping someone register for an assessment test, I would encourage you to call the testing center ahead of time directly, or have your participant call them ahead of time. They should really, and to verify if they're open, what the hours are, what the parameters are before they schedule an appointment to go in. You can have up to 10 people in a room per the executive order indoors following social distancing. So if you have a test administrator, you could have up to 9 participants at one time. Lori, did you have a question?
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So my question is more of a comment than a question. So Eastern has allowed students to sign up for testing and canceled them repeatedly for my program. But the big problem that I'm having with that, aside from the disappointment for the student and really just throwing things off with that, is that they're canceling the test and then not canceling it in the system. And that is messing up
the voucher
and the rescheduling. So do they know that that's part of the process? Because it's horrible that they're doing it in the first place, but then they're holding things up. And it's more work for me to go to Trisha. It's more work for Trisha to, solve all these problems. So have they been told that, hey, if you're going to do this, at least follow through and do what you have to do on the other end?
The short answer is no. But I definitely have written that down as something to bring up again. And I would ask that everyone that's available, you could also ask that this afternoon, because I believe they're having a testing update this afternoon.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So I want to recognize that we are coming upon our 10 o'clock hour here, and I don't want to change anyone, but I do acknowledge that probably people have some meetings to go to. So I want to kind of keep our conversation moving along. We just have a couple of more things that we want to share, and we'll circle back to questions. And if you have individual questions, please always feel free to email us and we can try to answer those as well. In terms of funding, we've been alerted that if you applied for WIOA funds that year 2020, 2024, the grant scoring rubric should be updated into the additional documents page in MACAE, so that you can review that. You can look at what your feedback was, your individual scores. It would be something that you want to take a look at. Obviously, it's behind us now, thank goodness, and we don't have to think about it for 4 more years. But I think it's really important and could be something as you prepare your Section 107 grants if you receive those as well. In addition, WIOA grants for 2021 are open and should be available for modifications at this point. I would encourage you to go in to begin that process so that you can have funds dispersed to your agency. In terms of Section 107, we anticipate that there probably will be a large amount of deferred funding available, and amounts should be known later this month. That is the deadline for your fiscal agent to collect that information. And at that point, that you should, at the local level, have a better understanding of what that deferred amount specific to your region, or if they're allocating it specifically to your program, should be. And you should have a clear understanding. So hopefully you can breathe a little sigh of relief there. And in addition, the 107 grants for this year, 2021 fiscal or program year, are now available in MACAE. And the date currently for submission is September 11th. I would say to be open for the possibility of that being pushed back, as if the discussion at our Section 107 Transitions Task Force meeting was that it probably is not appropriate to have programs submitting budgets if the state budget is still not approved by that date. And so continue to watch. Your fiscal agent will communicate with you if there's a change in that submission, but that is the current date as of today. Couple of things of what we can expect. is that technically state funds, I'm talking specifically about Section 107, are not known until the state budget is passed. We are still in a little bit of a limbo here. And that is a mitigated risk that we can continue to help you talk about with your program or with your agency, with your fiscal agents. You know, we really feel confident that we can continue to navigate those conversations with different entities. We do not expect a state budget to be passed until probably September, not December, September. And programming, we know, will have to be adaptive, not only because of funding implications, but also because of the virus of COVID-19. The last point I wanted to share was around advocacy. So right now, a lot of the advocacy that we're looking at is directly related to funding. At the federal level, negotiations, as you probably know through the news, are stalled. And both Democrats and Republicans have walked away at this point, and they're not expected back until the week of September 14th to resume business on COVID-19. They are returning to Washington to vote on the U.S. Postal Service legislation, but they're not expected to return until September to begin COVID-related spending bill discussions. How that impacts us at the state level is that next week there is a revenue consensus meeting. There was one that was conducted for Michigan in May, and this is the second part of it. This will be an indicator of what the state budget will look like and what the gaps are. And this is where the budget conversations will really begin to look like, if there are potential cuts, if there are implications, and what that might look like. Again, both sides, political parties, have said that education funding is a priority for them to try to stabilize. So we feel at McKay that adult education is a part of that. It's a part of workforce development. It's a part of stabilizing our economy, stabilizing families. And so we will really be launching another virtual campaign, and we are going to need your help to participate in that. It'll be similar to what we did last time, where it was you put in your information, you push a button to submit the letter on behalf of yourself, or your friends can do it, your family can do it, your students could do it. But we'll be launching that here in the next couple of weeks, kind of depending on some of the conversations that we hear. So our takeaways, I just wanted to, really end on a high note here. We're being asked to do a lot, but I know that what we're being asked to do, we're able to do. And I think that we're being asked to commit, we're being asked to really advocate for our participants. And I know that so many of you are consummate professionals, and at the end of the day, you're also wonderful human beings, and you care about the participants that you serve and the people that you work with. And so I think we're being asked to show our humanity at a time of crisis, and that is something that adult education has always done. I think we're being asked to communicate, making sure that, as to the best of our knowledge, we're communicating the knowledge that we have with our staff, with colleagues, with participants, with our community, and letting them know that we're open for business. We have programming that's going on, and we can do this. I think that's really important to share. We're open. Our doors are open. They might not be physically open, but we're open, and we will do our best to try to serve the communities that we're in. I think we're also being asked to engage and have some of these difficult conversations, and to assert ourselves into conversations that we might have originally been uncomfortable having, but now it's very imperative that we're having some of these conversations around how our programs are essential. They're part of the solution, not only related to education and workforce development, but we are a stabilizing force during this time of crisis for many vulnerable and marginalized families in our state. And I think finally, we're being asked to lead, just openly, with an open heart, with an honest mind, and keeping that optimism, I think, will take us forward. These are difficult. I don't want to say that this won't be difficult, but I do have confidence that we can pull this together, and we can do a wonderful job this year in delivering quality programming as we go forward. With that, I'd like to kind of wrap things up. If there are additional questions, I'm happy to stay on. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I know that on behalf of our leadership and our board of directors, we'll continue to do things there I put Tammy, her email address, as well as Judy and mine. Please always feel free to reach out to us. And I
Patrick, there's no
understand-
period. There's no period after the T in my email. It should
Oh,
just
it's
be,
just T Brown.
yeah.
All
Really
right, we'll
quick,
correct that.
Linda's texting me, asking me if anyone's having issues with CASAS testing this morning. Is anyone doing any testing this morning? Has anyone heard? I know, Maha, you were, but I don't know if it was paper pencil at one point. Okay, I'm gonna assume that means no.
It could be a no buy. Dearborn said that their EO said that they're testing and not having any problems. So.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all. I'm happy to stay on for a couple more minutes if you have questions, but I want to thank you all, and we will let you know when our next check-in will be. And I will be attending the meeting this afternoon, and maybe I'll see some of you there. Take care, everyone. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, and good luck these next couple of weeks.